Her bones seemed to cut through the wind, and her empty eyes revealed hunger and abandonment. Delivered as punishment, she crossed through fire and contempt. But something happened that night that silenced mockery and changed destinies. Subscribe to the channel and discover what happened. The sound of drums still echoed when Iracema was left at the edge of the dry land, where the wind carried the smell of embers and the ancient dust of the Bahian backlands. Her feet barely supported her, her gaze empty, her body so thin that her ribs seemed forcibly carved by hunger itself. She didn't cry. She didn't protest. She just stood there, surrendered like someone who gives in to abandonment. She was the daughter of the mayor of Jacobina, a man who believed his personal shame could be erased by turning her into a punishment. For Augusto Mendonça, leaving her with the Quilombolas wasn't a choice of desperation, but of contempt, a public gesture to humiliate those he never understood, a way of saying, I take what I have that is most undesirable and throw it to those I consider inferior. The community of Volta do Rio had never received someone like this, a young woman from the city, daughter of the one who had oppressed them for generations, thrown as if she were an unwanted burden. Watchful eyes observed from afar, while children hid behind their mothers' skirts. The news had spread quickly. The mayor gave an ultimatum. Either they accepted his disgraced daughter, or their lands would be taken within 30 days. There was no real choice. Elias, the community leader, wasn't known for sweet words. He was a man of few speeches and many silences. He carried on his back the absence of a brother who never returned from crossing the river during the last flood. He lived as one who fights against guilt and slept by the fire like one who fears forgetting. Seeing the young woman left as if she were valueless cargo, he simply extended his hand. He didn't touch her with pity nor with anger. He just held her arm and offered a piece of beiju, cassava flatbread still warm. It was the beiju from the manioc harvest, a ceremonial food, reserved for those returning from hard work or for those who survive the most severe droughts. The entire community watched, expecting him to set her aside, to isolate her like trash delivered to the bonfire. But he did the opposite. He called her sister of the spirit of resistance and led her to the nearest house, where the sick and the forgotten rested. Inside, Iracema found Tainá, a 6-year-old girl, motherless, with large, curious eyes that showed no fear of the stranger. "Did you come from heaven?" asked the little one, touching Iracema's straight hair. "No, little one. I came from hell," she answered without thinking, her voice hoarse from barely speaking anymore. Elias left the two and went out to face the community's questions. "Why accept the daughter of the man who wants our lands?" questioned Dona Jurema, the most respected elder of the Quilombo. "Because sometimes what is thrown at us as punishment can become our strength," he replied, looking toward the horizon where the city lights began to twinkle. Inside the small mud and straw house, Tainá wouldn't stop talking, telling stories about stars and forest animals. Iracema just listened, with no energy to respond. Her body ached, not just from hunger or the marks of her father's belt, but from something deeper, the pain of someone who lost even the right to belong. "Aren't you eating?" asked the girl, offering another piece of beiju. "I can't," whispered Iracema. "The belly hurts when it's empty for too long. But there's a tea that helps. Grandma Zifa makes it for me when I get sick," said the girl, running out to seek help. Minutes later, an elderly woman with hair as white as cotton entered the room. Without saying a word, she knelt beside Iracema and placed her hand on her forehead. "It's not fever," she muttered. "It's ancient hunger. It's soul pain." Old Zephyr prepared an infusion of bitter herbs, and while the liquid heated on the wood stove, massaged Iracema's arms with copaiba oil. "The body remembers what the mind wants to forget, my child. Each mark tells a story." News of Iracema's arrival spread quickly beyond the Quilombo's boundaries. By the next morning, regional merchants were already commenting on how Mayor Augusto had gotten rid of the daughter who embarrassed him. Distorted stories began to circulate. They said Iracema had become pregnant by a criminal, that she had stolen public money, that she was involved with drugs. The mayor denied nothing. Each distorted version perfectly served his political purposes, showing him as a man of principles who didn't spare even his own daughter when it came to justice. In truth, Iracema's crime had been much simpler. She had discovered documents proving that her father planned to take the Quilombolas' lands, to build a luxury resort in partnership with foreign businessmen. When she confronted him, the response came in the form of violence, first verbal, then physical, finally abandonment. In the community, the looks Irasima received were cutting. Most saw in her only bones and others shame. Some said she would bring bad luck, others that she wouldn't survive until the next full moon. But among the elders, care emerged. The women of the Quilombo began to prepare slow infusions with deep-rooted herbs and leaves that burned to the touch. Old Zephyr, without ever asking about her past, rubbed warm oil on her arms every morning to remind her that there was still blood there. And Taina, that small chatty child, began sleeping by her side, like someone protecting themselves from abandonment by sleeping next to another. The transformation wasn't quick nor miraculous. Her body trembled during her first walks around the yard. She vomited anything that wasn't water. She cried at night, hidden under the cotton sheets. But gradually, without realizing, something began to change. Not just in her fragile body, but in the atmosphere around her. Meanwhile, at Jacobina's City Hall, Augusto Mendonça signed the final documents that would initiate the process of expropriating the Quilombola lands. He had exactly 30 days to fulfill his promise to foreign investors. 30 days to wipe that community, which he considered an obstacle to progress, off the map. What he didn't know was that he had unwittingly planted the seed of his own defeat in the heart of those he intended to destroy. Irasema's first week in the community passed like a feverish dream. The nights were long, interrupted by nightmares where her father's severe face appeared among shadows. During the day, her weak body could barely rise from the mat where she slept. Taina was her constant guardian, always appearing with a glass of water or some fruit specially picked for her. "Eat slowly," the girl would say with the wisdom of someone who had known hunger. When the stomach forgets food, it needs to remember gradually. On the morning of the 8th day, Elias appeared at the door of the small house. His gaze was deep, like someone carrying questions that don't fit into words. "Today you will get to know our land," he said simply. It wasn't an invitation, but it didn't sound like an order either. It was a statement, like announcing the sunrise. Irasima tried to get up quickly, but her legs weakened. Without showing impatience, Elias extended his strong arm, marked by old scars. "The body remembers before the mind," he said. "Let it guide you in its own time." The walk was short, but revealing. Elias showed Irasima the community's boundaries. To the west, the river that gave the Quilombo its name, Volta do Rio, with its muddy waters that brought life and, sometimes, destruction. To the east, the dirt road leading to the city, always threatening in its proximity. To the south, the collective plantations of manioc, beans and corn that fed everyone, and to the north, the dense forest that provided medicines, game and protection. 24 families have lived here for 5 generations, explained Elias. Before that, our ancestors escaped from plantations and hid in these lands that nobody wanted. Lands we made fertile with blood and sweat. Irasima listened in silence, head bowed. She knew that story well, but from the distorted version her father told, property invaders, lazy people who refused to work on farms like decent folks. Augusto Mendonça's version always ended with the same phrase, people who don't deserve even the air they breathe. "Do you know why your father hates us so much?" asked Elias, as if reading her thoughts. Before she could answer, a young woman approached running. "Elias, there are people from the city hall on Mr. João's lands. They're measuring, marking with stakes." Elias's face hardened. "Stay with Taina," he told Irasema, before hastily departing with other men. When they returned hours later, they brought worrying news. City hall officials, escorted by police, had begun to mark areas for infrastructure works. It was just the beginning, everyone knew. The countdown that the mayor had stipulated was starting. At the community meeting held that night, Irasima remained apart, sitting on the threshold of a house. She observed the worried faces illuminated by the central bonfire. Voices were raised, some proposing physical resistance, others suggesting attempts at negotiation. It was then that old Zephyr stood up, leaning on her Arrera wood staff. The silence was immediate. "We have among us the key to the problem," said the elder, pointing to Irasima. All eyes turned to her, some with distrust, others with sudden hope. "The daughter knows the father's secrets." Irasima felt her heart quicken. It was true that she knew her father's plans. that she had seen documents, heard conversations, but she also knew that confronting him meant real danger. "I can't help," she murmured, her voice almost inaudible. He will—" The words got stuck in her throat. Zephyr approached slowly, held her face between wrinkled hands and said, "Fear has big eyes, my daughter. It makes us see dangers greater than they are. But courage, courage has firm feet." That night, Irasema couldn't sleep. Beside her, Tainar snored peacefully, oblivious to the adult's concerns. The girl had become attached to her in a surprising way, calling her sister from the city, and making plans for when she would be strong as a jaguar. It was for Tainar that Irasema feared most. What would happen to that child if the community was expelled? Where would all those families go? The image of the luxury resort planned by her father appeared in her mind as an obscene affront to those simple and profound lives. When the first ray of sun entered through the window crack, Irasema had already made her decision. She found Elias in the flower house, where he had been working since early morning. "I need to tell you everything I know," she said, her voice still trembling but determined. For almost an hour she reported in detail her father's plans, the partnership with foreign businessmen, the falsified documents claiming the lands were unoccupied, the bribes to authorities who could interfere in the process. She also told about the violence she suffered when she discovered all this and tried to confront him. Elias listened attentively without interrupting. When she finished, he only asked, "Why are you telling us this now?" The answer came without hesitation. "For Tainar, for Donna Zephyr, for the Beiju you offered me when I deserved nothing." A discreet smile appeared on Elias's usually serious face. "You always deserved it, Irasema. Everyone deserves food and dignity." That same day, Elias gathered the community leaders to develop a plan. With the information provided by Irasema, they decided to seek external help. Lawyers linked to social movements, independent journalists, opposition politicians. The fight would be difficult and time was scarce. 22 days was all that remained before the machines would arrive to demolish the first houses. While the community mobilized, Irasema began her own transformation. The daily walks with Elias became longer. He taught her about medicinal plants, about how to read the weather in the clouds, about the oral history of the Quilombo that wasn't in any schoolbook. Gradually, her body regained strength. Her hands, once delicate and useless, learned to make beiju, to weave straw, to plant seedlings. At night, she participated in the conversation circles and, timidly at first, then with growing confidence, began to sing the songs that Tainar taught her. Her voice, which had seemed dead before, came back to life like water finding a crack in the rock. One afternoon, while helping with the manioc harvest, Irasema noticed a black, shiny car approaching on the dirt road. She recognized it immediately. It was the official vehicle of the city hall. Her entire body froze. Augusto Mendonça was coming personally to check on the progress of his plans. When the car stopped in the center of the community, Elias was already there, accompanied by the other leaders. Irasema remained partially hidden behind an anato tree, her heart beating so hard it seemed to want to escape from her chest. Augusto got out of the car with the same arrogance as always, accompanied by 2 security guards. He greeted Elias with false cordiality. "I came to check on my daughter," he announced in a loud voice for everyone to hear, "and also to personally inform you that construction will begin in exactly 3 weeks. You will have 2 days to remove your belongings." The tension was palpable. Women held their children tighter, men clenched their fists. It was then that Tainar escaped from her grandmother's arms and ran until she was face to face with the mayor. "Are you Irasema's mean father?" she asked with the cutting innocence of children. Augusto's face hardened. He looked at the girl, as one looks at an insignificant insect. "Where is Irasema?" he asked, ignoring the question. It was at this moment that Irasema found courage she didn't know she possessed. She came out of her hiding place and walked until she stood between Tainar and her father. "I'm here," she said, her voice firmer than ever before. Augusto's gaze mixed surprise and contempt. He hadn't expected to find his daughter standing, much less with that defiant posture. "I see you still haven't learned your lesson," he said through clenched teeth. "Perhaps you need more time among these savages." Elias stepped forward, placing himself beside Irasema. "Your daughter is not a prisoner here, Mr. Mayor. She is free to come and go." Augusto's eyes narrowed. He wasn't used to being contradicted, much less by someone he considered inferior. "Let's go, Irasema," he ordered. "Enough of this charade." The silence that followed seemed eternal. All eyes were fixed on Irasema, who felt the weight of choice on her shoulders. It wasn't just about staying or going, but about who she really was and who she wanted to become. "I'm not going with you," she finally answered. "This is my place now." Fury took over Augusto's face. "You have no choice," he shouted, advancing to grab his daughter's arm. He was stopped by Elias, who placed himself between the two. "She made her choice," he said calmly, "and we protect our own." "This won't stand," Augusto threatened, before returning to the car, casting a final look of hatred at his daughter. "In 3 weeks, nothing will remain here but rubble." When the car disappeared around the bend in the road, Irasema felt her knees weaken. Elias supported her before she fell. "You were brave," he said, "but the real battle has just begun." That night, as everyone slept, Irasema watched the stars through the window. The confrontation with her father had awakened painful memories, but also a determination she had never felt before. She knew he wouldn't give up easily, that he would use all his power to destroy the community, and now to punish her again. But something had fundamentally changed. She was no longer the same person who had arrived there, fragile and defeated. She had found not just a refuge, but a purpose. And for that purpose, she was willing to face even the man she feared most in the world. The days that followed were of intense activity in the Quilombo. Augusto Mendonça's visit had accelerated the resistance plans. With only 19 days ahead, each hour became precious. Irasema surprised everyone with her determination. Using her knowledge about the City Hall operations, she helped identify the weak points in her father's strategy. He falsified documents about the historical occupation of the area, she explained during a meeting with lawyers who had come to assist the community. "There are original records in the main church archives that prove these lands were legally donated to your ancestors. But my father hid these documents." The lawyers took notes frantically, impressed with the precision of the information. "How do you know all this?" one of them asked, adjusting his glasses on his thin face. "My father raised me to be his political successor," Irasema replied with a sad smile, "until he discovered I had a heart." While the legal battle took shape, life in the community followed its own rhythm. Children continued going to the small, improvised school. Women wove, cooked, and sang. Men tended to the fields and animals. It was as if, faced with the threat, the Quilombo responded by affirming its existence even more intensely. One afternoon, while Irasema was helping in the flower house, Elias approached with an unexpected invitation. "Tonight is the full moon. We'll perform the Jurema ritual. I want you to participate." The Jurema ritual was the community's most important ceremony, performed only at crucial moments. It was when the ancestors were called to give strength and guidance. Irasema felt the weight of that invitation. "I don't know if I deserve it," she responded hesitantly. "I'm still his daughter." Elias held her shoulders firmly. "You are a daughter of the earth now, and the earth doesn't ask where the seed came from, it just welcomes it and makes it grow." At night, the central yard was carefully prepared. Jurema leaves were arranged in a circle. Beeswax candles marked the 4 cardinal points. In the center, a fire of specially selected twigs waited to be lit. The residents gathered in silence, dressed in white clothes, simple but clean. Irasema wore a dress borrowed from one of the women, her hair tied with colorful ribbons that Tainá had insisted on placing. "So you look pretty for the spirits," the girl explained. When everyone was positioned, Dona Zefa entered the circle. Despite her advanced age, she moved with surprising agility. In her hands she carried a gourd with river water, purified with herbs. "The flowing water takes and brings," she said, sprinkling drops over those present. "It takes away fear, brings courage. It takes away doubt, brings certainty." The drums began to sound, first slowly, then with increasing intensity. Voices rose in ancient songs, words half African, half indigenous, preserved through generations. Irasema observed everything with a mixture of fascination and respect. She had never imagined that there was so much strength and beauty in those rituals that her father described as primitive witchcraft. Elias approached and extended his hand. "Come," he said simply. He led her to the center of the circle, where Dona Zefa was waiting. The elder held her face between calloused hands, and spoke words that seemed to come from another time. One who is born twice knows two worlds. One who knows two worlds can build bridges. She placed a small leather pouch in her hands. Keep it close to your heart. It's soil from the four corners of the Quilombo, to remember that you belong even when you're far away. Silent tears ran down Irasima's face. She had never felt such belonging, not even in the house where she was born. The ritual continued through the night. Stories were told, promises renewed, plans strengthened. When the first rays of sun began to tint the horizon, everyone felt that something fundamental had changed, not just in Irasima, but in the community itself. The arrival of the enemy's daughter had created a new configuration of forces, a new possible path. The following days brought agitated news. The lawyers had obtained a temporary injunction suspending any expropriation action until the land issue was completely clarified. It was an important victory, but everyone knew it was temporary. Augusto Mendonça was not a man to respect judicial decisions that contradicted his interests. And indeed, on the morning of the 15th day after his visit, 3 tractors appeared at the border of the lands, accompanied by armed men who presented themselves as private security. They positioned themselves strategically and announced they would begin clearing the land the following morning, with or without judicial authorization. Panic quickly set in. Women gathered children inside the houses. Men met to discuss forms of physical resistance. Elias tried to maintain calm, knowing that a direct confrontation would result in tragedy. It was then that Irasima had a desperate idea. "I need to go to the city," she announced. "Now." Elias looked at her with apprehension. "It's dangerous. Your father will—" She interrupted him. "My father is not the only power in the city. There are people who can help us, but they need to see with their own eyes what's happening." Reluctantly, Elias agreed, but insisted on accompanying her. Before they left, Taina ran to Irasima and gave her a small package of leaves. "It's a corn doll I made for you. For good luck." Irasima kept the gift next to the small bag of soil she had received in the ritual. The journey to Jacobina was tense. Each curve in the road brought the fear of an ambush. Irasima was heading to a specific destination, the newsroom of the small local newspaper, the only one not under the mayor's direct control. There she found Sebastião Moreira, a veteran journalist who had already faced Augusto Mendonça's power on other occasions. "I need you to come with me," said Irasima, after quickly explaining the situation. "Bring your camera. The world needs to see what my father is doing." Sebastião hesitated only for a moment before grabbing his equipment. "I always knew you were different from him, girl," he commented as they got into his worn-out car. On the way back, Irasima made 2 more stops, one at the diocese where she convinced Father Antonio to accompany them, and another at the headquarters of the Business Association, where she found Donna Mercedes, an influential businesswoman who had always discreetly opposed the mayor's authoritarian tactics. When they returned to the Quilombo, it was already getting dark. Augusto's hired security guards were still there, now camped near the tractors, bonfires lit for the approaching night. The presence of the priest, the businesswoman, and the journalist caused immediate buzz. Sebastião wasted no time. He began photographing everything, recording testimonies, documenting the intimidating presence of armed men on lands protected by a judicial injunction. Father Antonio addressed the security guards directly, presenting himself with the moral authority that his cassock provided. "What you are doing is illegal," he declared in a loud voice. "You are violating not only the law of men, but also the law of God." Some of the men, recognizing the parish priest they attended, began to show evident discomfort. Donna Mercedes, in turn, used her phone to activate contacts in the capital. In less than an hour, a federal police car appeared, sent in haste due to the report of non-compliance with a court order. The tension was palpable. The security guards, seeing themselves surrounded by important witnesses and federal authorities, began to retreat. Their leader made a hasty call, presumably to Augusto Mendonça. After a tense conversation, he announced they would withdraw temporarily. The community celebrated that small victory, but everyone knew it was just the beginning of a bigger battle. That night, gathered in Donna Zefa's house, Irasima, Elias, and the visitors from the city elaborated a more ambitious plan. "It's not enough to postpone the problem," explained Irasima. "As long as my father is in power, you will never be safe." "What do you suggest then?" asked Sebastião, noting everything in his worn notebook. "That we reveal the whole truth," she replied with determination in her eyes. "The falsified documents, the bribes, the misappropriation of funds for the resort, everything." A heavy silence fell over the group. What Iracema proposed meant not only confronting the mayor, but potentially destroying his political career and even sending him to prison. "Are you sure, my daughter?" asked Father Antonio, his voice gentle. "He is still your father." Iracema looked at Taina, who slept peacefully in a corner of the room, oblivious to the adult's concerns. Then at Elias, whose gaze conveyed strength and understanding. Finally at the small bag of soil she carried close to her heart. "My father taught me that family is those who share the same blood," she responded slowly. "But I learned here that family is those who share the same ground, the same struggle, the same dream." The decision was made. The next morning, Iracema would do something she had never imagined. She would publicly denounce her own father's crimes. The plan was risky and depended on perfect timing. Sebastião would publish a detailed report in the newspaper, with all the evidence Iracema would provide. Simultaneously, Father Antonio would present a formal complaint to the public ministry, supported by the original documents that Iracema knew were hidden in her father's personal archive. Donna Mercedes would use her influence to ensure that state authorities wouldn't ignore the case, and Elias would organize a large peaceful demonstration in front of the city hall, gathering not only the Quilombolas, but also supporters from the city who were already being mobilized through solidarity networks. It was a bold plan, almost reckless. If it failed, the consequences would be devastating. If it worked, it would forever change not just the destiny of the Quilombo, but of the entire region. When everyone was preparing to sleep, Iracema asked to be alone with Elias for a moment. Under the starry sky of the Backlands, she finally asked the question that had intrigued her since the first day. "Why did you welcome me? Why did you offer the sacred Beju to a stranger, the daughter of your enemy?" Elias remained silent for a few moments, as he always did before pronouncing important words. Then he pointed to the stars. "See those two there? They seem separate, but the ancients say they are the same celestial body, divided by a great explosion millions of years ago. Sometimes what seems most distant has the same origin." He lightly touched Iracema's face. "When I saw you that first day, I recognized something familiar. Not in your face or your name, but in your pain. The same pain I carried when I lost my brother." For the first time since arriving at the Quilombo, Iracema felt she truly understood that man of few words and many actions. He wasn't just a community leader protecting his own, nor just a kind man welcoming a person in need. He was someone who recognized others' pain, because he had already inhabited similar dark places. "Tomorrow, we will face your father," continued Elias. "But remember, the victory we seek is not to destroy him, but to build something he never managed to understand." Iracema nodded, feeling a strange peace despite the approaching storm. That night, she slept without nightmares for the first time in a long time. Dawn brought with it a different energy to the Quilombo. Iracema woke before the sun, her heart racing. Beside her, Taina slept deeply. "Take care of her for me," she asked old Zifa. The elder gave her a small amulet of carved wood, "so your feet won't tremble before the oppressor." The plan began early. Iracema, Elias, and Sebastião set off for the city. They carried a folder with incriminating documents against the mayor. At the city hall, they managed to enter Augusto's empty office. Iracema opened the secret safe using her own birthday as the combination, perhaps the only sentimental gesture her father had ever shown. Inside, she found the original documents of the land donation to the Quilombo, dated 1889. It was the definitive proof. Suddenly they heard voices. Augusto was unexpectedly returning with a man in a suit. "We need to accelerate everything," the mayor was saying. "I have the judge on my payroll. I want the machines ready to enter tomorrow." The man seemed uncomfortable. "And if there's resistance?" Augusto's smile was icy. "That's what the men we hired are for. They have experience in resolving complicated situations." At that moment, Iracema's cell phone rang. "There's someone here," said Augusto. There was no way to hide. Iracema stepped out, documents against her chest. "It's over, Father. We know everything." The door opened again. Father Antonio entered with federal police officers and Donna Mercedes. Augusto tried to explain, but the police, after examining the documents, took him to provide clarification. Before leaving, he cast a final look at his daughter. "You're stronger than I thought. Too bad you chose the wrong side." "I didn't choose a side, Father. I chose what's right." In the days that followed, events unfolded rapidly. Augusto was removed from office, the investors backed off, the community received official recognition of their lands. But for Iracema, the greatest transformation was inside her. The fragile young woman now walked with firm steps, hands calloused from work, face tanned by the sun. On a special afternoon, Donna Zefa organized a ceremony. "Today we celebrate rebirth, not just of one person, but of all of us." She called Iracema to the center and asked Elias to join. "This man received you when you arrived as a burden. Now he receives you as a sister. Tainar brought a yellow ipe sapling. We'll plant it so it grows with our new history." At the exact spot where Iracema had been left, they planted the small tree. The hands that had trembled now sank into the earth with purpose. The soil that had received her tears now received her hopes. 3 years later, the ipe was blooming, its golden flowers visible from a distance. The community was thriving with sustainable projects. Iracema, now a teacher, taught the children about their ancestors, not as victims, but as protagonists. Elias and she had become inseparable partners, strengthening everyone around them. One afternoon, under the flowering ipe, Tainar, now a teenager, brought visitors, among them a frightened-eyed girl from the city. "This is Maite. She'll be living with us for a while." Iracema recognized in her old gaze. She offered her warm beiju. "Welcome. Here nobody walks alone." Elias smiled discreetly. The cycle was renewing itself. She who had been received as a burden was now welcoming another lost soul. That night, under the starry sky, the community celebrated. Iracema observed the faces around the fire, links in a chain that came from the past and extended into the future. When her gaze met Elias's, a silent understanding passed between them. They had built a home where dignity was not a privilege but a right, where difference was not a threat but a gift. Thus, that community in the Bahian backlands continued its ancestral dance of resistance and celebration, because, as Iracema had learned and now taught, those who are left behind often become the first to show the way. If this journey of transformation touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories that celebrate the strength of community and belonging. Like the yellow EP planted by Iracema and Tainar, our community here also flourishes with each like and shared comment. Which moment of this narrative resonated most with you? Tell us in the comments.